Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Liz Popwell. I'm the Chief Strategy and Transformation Officer for Stony Brook Medicine. And one of the things I get to do is to talk with lots of our experts about different topics that are important to our community. And today we're going to talk about falls. And I'm so pleased to have this discussion today. Falls are very important. Prevention of falls is very important, especially as we begin to age. And a lot of times falls with the elderly can lead to broken bones, hospitalization, emergency department visits. I know personally I had a grandmother when I was a young woman who fell and ended up having to have a hip replacement. So falls are a very important topic for us when it comes to safety in the home, safety in the environment. And today I have three of our experts, and I'm so excited to have this time with them and this time with you. So I'm going to go ahead and let them introduce themselves. Kristi, would you like to go first?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Liz. So my name is Kristi Ladowski. I am a public health professional, and I have been serving as Stony Brook Trauma Center's injury prevention manager for quite some time. And our main focus and the majority of my work focuses and centers on preventing falls. So delighted to be here today.
Thank you, Kristi. Brittany, would you like to go next?
Sure. Thank you, Liz. Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Gambini. I'm the Falls Prevention Coordinator for Stony Brook, and I've worked as an occupational therapist for the last 8 years, so a lot of experience working with the older adult population.
Great. Thank you, Brittany. April?
Hi, everyone. April Feld. I am the director of our ambulatory care management team here, functioning under Stony Brook Medicine's clinically integrated network. And my team and I take care of a lot of the older adults that utilize our services across our health span. And one of the key topics that we do find ourselves talking about is fall prevention and mitigation.
Great. Thank you so much. And don't forget, as we go through the live stream, there is a QR code. Please go ahead and use that to drop us a line. Let us know if you have a question. We also can use the chat function, so please feel free to call out any questions you have as we begin the discussion. So the first question I have today is really for Kristi and any others who want to join in, but tell us a little bit about why should we be talking about falls? Why is it so important that we pay attention to this topic?
Oh, sure. It's great that we're starting off with this question. So as you briefly mentioned in the beginning, falls are common. They can be devastating, like you said, with severe injuries. They're costly because of all of the medical costs associated with healing and bringing people back to enjoy their lives after an injury. But the good news is, and what we're going to mostly focus on with our discussion today, is that they are preventable. So anywhere between 1 in 4 to 1 in 3 older adults fall each year. And when we say older adult, we're using a generic number of 65 and older. But that can look very different throughout the age span. So we're just using these as general numbers to reference. So that's what we're talking about, the 65 plus group when we refer to older adults. The thing is, even though 1 in 3 older adults may fall each year, less than half of them talk to their healthcare provider about it. And we do know that there is a stigma associated around falls. So maybe we feel like we don't want people to know because we're embarrassed. Maybe we don't want people to know because they're going to worry about us, because they're going to say, I don't think it's safe for you to live at home anymore. So there's lots of different reasons why we don't talk about it. But our overall goal is to maintain our independence as we age. And falls can be one of the biggest barriers to living independently. So the majority of older adults, when we survey them, they want to do what we call age in place, meaning where you're living in your home, that's where you want to stay living. So how can we stay active and independent and enjoy our life as we age in place? The falls that occur are costly in the sense of annually each year, the US is spending over about $50 billion. It's one of the most expensive health conditions to treat because of our emergency department visits, hospitalizations, and then the recovery after. So things like skilled nursing facilities, home care, durable medical equipment, home modifications, these all add up. So falls are very costly. And a surprising fact that a lot of folks don't know is that here in Suffolk County, New York, we have the highest annual incidence of falls out of all New York State. So more people are falling here in Suffolk County than anywhere else in New York State. And we're lucky here at Stony Brook Medicine that we have a New York State Level 2 Silver Geriatric Emergency Department, and that's accredited by the American College of Emergency Physicians. So each year in our emergency department, we're treating over 25,000 patients. Half of those patients are being treated in our emergency departments because they had a fall. So again, these numbers are big numbers. They're impactful numbers, but what we're going to mostly focus on today is prevention.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for that. I think the next question we really need to get into is some myth busting. You know, there are common myths about falling, and I want to make sure that we share our expertise and knowledge on that. So Kristi, would you like to share a few facts?
Sure. I'm going to start with a myth that we hear a lot that, you know, falling happens to other people. It's not something I need to worry about. But falls can happen to anyone, and we fall throughout our lifespan. So thinking back to when we were little kids and infants and toddlers fall a lot. So we really want to get away of that stigma and know that it can happen to any of us. So knowing that, yes, we're at risk of a fall, but that there's a lot of things we can do to prevent it. Another common myth we hear is it's just an inevitable part of aging. It's just something that happens, but that's not true. When I was mentioning earlier that, you know, when we say older adult, we're talking about 65 plus, but depending on our behaviors and our lifestyles and just how we've lived our lives, 65 on one person looks very different from 85 on another person. So as we're thinking about aging, we can age very, very well and do a lot of things to prevent our risk of falling if we really take a self-assessment and recognize, well, what are my risks of falling? So I'd love to also pass it over to April to share some of the common myths that she hears about too.
I think I'm actually going to toss this one back to Brittany.
Oh, sure.
No problem. So another common myth that we hear is that people feel like, well, my muscle strength and flexibility are, you know, it's not as great as it used to be. There's nothing I can really do about it. And while we might lose some of our muscle mass as we age, exercise can partially help us restore our strength and our flexibility. And it's never too late to start an exercise program. I mean, we constantly work with people who are in their 80s and 90s and working on their strength and balance and demonstrating improvements. So it's definitely never too late. And another big one that comes up is that a lot of people think they don't need to get their vision checked frequently or every year. And vision is actually one of the really big key risk factors for falls. And while aging may be associated with some normal vision loss, that vision loss can result in an increased risk of falling. So it's very important to note that people who have vision problems are actually more than twice as likely to fall than those who do not have a visual impairment. So we recommend at a minimum of people having their eyes checked at least once a year and making sure they're keeping their glasses clean, getting their glasses updated, and just making sure they're really keeping track and taking care of their vision health.
That's a really good point. I think a lot of people don't correlate the vision component to the balance component to falls. So that's a great call out. I appreciate that. What are some of the ways that falling can happen? Brittany?
Just to clarify for everybody who's listening, we look at a fall and define it as a time of unexpectedly coming to rest on the ground. So just to give you that visual reference. So as Kristi started mentioning before, it's important to realize that there can be varying levels of how somebody falls depending on their age and their physical fitness level. So a more physically fit older adult may trip and fall while gardening, whereas a frailer older adult who has a lot more trouble moving around may fall while they're getting on and off a toilet. So just while we're going through a different list of different ways people may fall, those situations can be very different depending on the specific person. But typically we see a lot of people who fall while they're transferring, meaning from going from one surface to another. So whether that means on and off the toilet, in and out of bed, in and out of the shower with the slippery surfaces. people reaching for objects out of their base of support or carrying multiple objects so that they aren't able to brace themselves. Different environmental hazards, so poor lighting, not having handles or grab bars to hold on to, clutter on the floor. A lot of people who are rushing and not paying attention. I frequently have patients who tell me, oh, it was just a stupid fall, I wasn't paying attention. And I always tell them it was a stupid fall this time. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but if we're rushing again next time, it may not be so silly the next time when we actually get hurt. So it's very important to take your time and pay attention to what we're doing. Also, not using an ambulatory device appropriately. So this can be a rolling walker, a single access cane, a rollator, whatever type of device has either been prescribed to you by a doctor or a PT, making sure you're using it appropriately. Also wearing unsafe shoes. So that is a big one, as well as pets. People trip over them, or they're walking their dogs and the dog pulls them and they end up falling, as well as uneven surfaces. So whether that's on the grass, on the concrete when it's all broken up, things like that. So, but I think my biggest takeaway is that just not rushing and making sure you're paying attention can help decrease a lot of these risks.
Great. Thank you so much. That's a lot of good information to keep in mind. April, can you tell us a little bit about what can increase the risk of falling, or who really is at higher risk for falling?
That's a really great question. And I can answer it a number of different ways. I think for simplicity's sake, I think the more risk factors somebody has, the greater risk of an incident of fall occurring. There are both what we call modifiable risk factors and non-modifiable risk factors. Non-modifiable would be age, as an example. So one indicator of increased risk is age in and of itself. So that's the 65 and older. And then the modifiable is more like what Brittany was discussing about environment, clothing, footwear, asking for assistance and other types of related behavior. But on a more global note, the things that increase our risk for falls are any type of physical impairment. So decreased mobility, right side, left side, lower legs, even upper extremities too. It's not just limited to the lower extremities for balance. Also, a decreased or an impairment of cognition and vision and hearing, which we also just heard from Brittany. Other things that increase, generally speaking, one's risk for fall would be number of medications. So it's very common for older adults to be on more than 9 medications at once. So the more medication, the greater incidence of side effects, let's say. And within the medications themselves, there are things called high-risk medications. And they may not be applicable to someone, but very applicable to somebody else. So it's really important when we talk about risk factors, we again think about ourselves as a unique individual. But within the high-risk medication groups, these are things like opioids or narcotics, so heavy-duty pain medications, sedatives, sleeping aids, also things like anti-seizure medications, or even anti-diabetics like insulin, which is very common today. And then still relevant, but not as great of an impact, I would say, are things to manage cardiac conditions and high blood pressure. And this is where conversations with physicians or your primary care provider is so super important. And we're going to get to that later, I believe, into the conversation about what it can be tailored for you. What is most beneficial to you? Does it make more sense to take my blood pressure medication, or am I so fearful of the side effect of dizziness, for example? So those are all where we talk about, what's going to work for you. The other thing I would say, or the two things I would say are at increased risk indicators would be in the area of rushing, but particularly urinary urgency. So this could be medication driven because somebody is on, quote, a water pill or not. But this idea that you have to rush to the bathroom because you have such an intensity to urinate. And so along the way getting to the bathroom, you can see a lot of trip and falls and just incidents around that process. And then last but not least, something that we see very frequently, or frequently enough to make note of, is presence of an infection. So a lot of times in the older adult, we'll see patients in the emergency room post-fall, but really there was an underlying urinary tract infection. So keeping on top of your urinary health, I think, is always a good thing to do. And coming up with toileting programs for someone, if that's relevant to them, that is also very helpful. And I think those are the top indicators that put somebody at increased risk for fall in this age group.
Those are excellent tips and topics to be talking about with your physicians, your nurse practitioners, whoever's caring for you, because there's a lot of complicated components that can go into impacting that. So thank you, April, for sharing a little bit about medications and other drivers for some of the risk factors. Brittany, why can falling be dangerous? What happens? What do we see from the outcome perspective side of things?
Yeah, so even before getting to the outcomes aspect, I think it's really important that we keep spreading this awareness that falling once actually doubles somebody's risk of falling again. So knowing that, we also know that less than half of people who have a fall actually report it to their healthcare provider. So knowing once we get into how dangerous these falls are, we really need to encourage people to report them to their providers so that we can actually be intervening. So falls are the leading cause of injury for older adults. And on top of that, a more startling statistic is that 25,000 older adults actually die every year due to falls. So knowing that it's the leading cause of injury and how many people are actually dying and it's a fatal injury, we really need to encourage people to actually report this to their healthcare provider, because we can't intervene if they don't know about it. So some common injuries that we see are fractures, lacerations, traumatic brain injury if they hit their head. And the hip fracture is frequently one that comes up, and experts actually estimate that somewhere between 18 to 33% of all older adults who do suffer a hip fracture from a fall will actually die within a year. So as much as we want to address things after they fall, that preventative aspect is really, really key. And there's also the emotional aspect. So dealing with losing a sense of independence, as well as people begin to limit their own activities out of fear of falling. And this fear of falling can create a whole cycle of continuing to limit themselves and not enjoying their life. So we don't want that aspect to be happening either.
Great. Thank you, Brittany. And again, for the audience that's out there, a lot of good information being shared with you today. Don't forget, if you have a question, use our QR code on the screen there, or go ahead and send us a comment through the chat. I'd like to talk now about prevention and preventing serious injury from falls. Obviously, there are a lot of components that go into and risk factors that go into falling. But Kristi, help us understand what we can do to prevent those falls and prevent the severity of those falls.
Sure. So before I dive into that, I did just want to add a little bit to what Brittany was just mentioning about some of the consequences and of falls. Mm-hmm. So we offer a lot of community-based programming where we get to have discussions around preventing falls and things we can do to change our behavior and our attitudes about enjoying our lives and keeping on independently. One of the things that we've heard sometimes feedback, especially since we work for a health system, is I don't want to go to the emergency department because they're going to keep me there for hours. They're going to rescan me. It takes up a lot of my time. But we want to make a really important point here where if somebody's on a blood thinner, that they should treat every fall as serious. So even if they don't feel an injury or see an injury, they should still notify their healthcare provider so that they can talk about some things, because something might be going on internally, which Brittany was kind of talking about before. And one of those important things is as we age, we're actually at more risk of not a severe head event where we're thinking of like sports and football, but something like a fall or bumping our head onto something kind of hard, even though we didn't think it was that hard, can lead to a very slow brain bleed. So that's why they've changed the practice. We're a level 1 trauma center. So at trauma centers, our surgeons know that even if our scans didn't pick something up when you first came to the emergency department, 6 or 12 hours later, we may start to pick up that very small bleed and be able to treat it so that it does not turn into a life-threatening event. So we don't want to ignore falls. Like Brittany and I have both said, less than half of people tell their healthcare providers after they've had a fall. Yes, everyone should tell their healthcare providers, but if you're on a blood thinner, definitely at least call your healthcare provider to let them know that something happened so that they can talk with you about next steps or what to look out for. But let's get into the good stuff of, well, what can we do to prevent the fall in the first place? So like April was saying, there's modifiable things. So this is about our environment. So those are things to just start being aware of. The most important thing is to stay active. There's a lot of truth to the saying, if you don't use it, you lose it. And the number one most important thing we can do to prevent a fall and reduce our risk of falling is to improve our balance and strength. And Brittany was mentioning this earlier. It's never too late to build up strength and improve our balance. So even if you haven't been physically active recently, it's never too late to get started, and it can make a big difference. So getting involved with balance training, strength training, and doing things you enjoy, whether it's gardening, dancing, swimming, other types of activities. So there's not a one size fits all. There's lots of different types of physical activity you can do, but we'll say that that is number one. Physical activity and exercise is the best top number one thing that we can do to reduce our fall risk. Another thing about modifiable risk factors. So we do talk about our environment a lot, our clothing. I also want to talk to a little bit more of what April was saying before about medications. So managing our chronic conditions. So if we do have a chronic condition, keeping it under control. So that's taking our medications, again, eating healthy, staying active. That's going to help reduce our risk of a fall by managing any of our chronic conditions that we have. And talking with our healthcare providers of, yes, I've been on this medication for a long time, but now that I'm at increased risk for a fall, can we weigh out the balance, the pros and cons of staying at this dose or this type of medication? Like April mentioned, there are some types of medications that put us at greater risk for a fall, and those risks start to outweigh the benefits of the medication. So important to have those conversations with your doctor. Another big thing is it's our behavior. So Brittany was saying a lot of our stories are, I was rushing or not paying attention. The more we talk about preventing falls and our risk of falling, maybe the more likely we'll be in our everyday lives to be more present and in the moment. And if we're climbing the stairs, that we're thinking, okay, I'm going step by step. A lot of folks tell us they know how many steps they have because they used to miss maybe the last one because their mind was somewhere else. So now they literally count out. They know they have 12 steps and they keep counting until they get to 12 and they know they've made it to the last step. It might sound silly to some of us, but that's a great thing to start early on before your risk of falling really increases. So for me, I'm always trying my best to make sure that when I'm climbing or going downstairs, I have my hand at least hovering the handrail, if not touching that handrail. Do I feel like I need it right now? No, but is it there and can I easily grab it if I do need it at some point? So I'm starting to build in these lifelong habits early so that they seamlessly carry in to my life as I age and choose to age in place too. Also, just being honest with ourselves and what can we do? What maybe do we need to do slightly differently? And it's not about that we can't do things anymore. We want to enjoy our lives, but it's about making changes to continue to enjoy our lives. So just because I always carried in the case of water bottles doesn't mean I have to keep doing that. It's okay to let somebody else bring it in or have it delivered. So these are things that it's just weighing out the pros and cons of certain types of behaviors. I think we all kind of have stories too about things that we may have done or changed. So for me, whenever I have my older adult family members visiting, I am going through my house and doing those checks of, do I have night lights? I enjoy them myself. So do I have the night lights that are going to make that clear path to get them to the bathroom? Have I made sure that there's no throw rugs or slippery surfaces? Are there grab rails or handrails? So I'm modifying my own house for my guest visitors because I want the people that I care about and staying with me to also be able to stay safely in my house, let alone their own home as well. So I don't know if April or Brittany, if you have a few other stories that you wanted to share. I know April, in the past, we've talked about a family member and how
yes.
changes.
Yes, thank you. I think many can relate to the holidays. We all partake in some of them at least. And I didn't think I would be absorbing as many holiday hosting as I have. But a key reason behind that was my husband's grandmother, who's over 100 and in an assisted living. Her physical mobility has declined over the recent years. And so she no longer could get up, my mother-in-law's steps, and couldn't fit through her small entranceways and doorway passages. So we made the decision that the most functional space in order for everyone to participate was to have the gathering at my house. The curb height was very minimal. There's no steps into my home. The bathroom's on the first floor. The dining's on the first floor. Wide spaces, easy for that rollator to get on through. So a real quick example of, making it work within a changing family.
I love that. And we usually say also, start small. You don't have to do everything all at once and make all the changes. Just notice in your daily life, where are things like, you know what, that's a small change that I can make today, and continue to make those changes and maintain them over the long term. So don't feel like you have to do everything all at once. We can go step by step.
Kristi, I just wanted to add before Liz takes it on back. One thing about the behavior, and you did mention it, but I want to super highlight it, is stop with the multitasking. So many times do we see people walking down the sidewalks. I see somebody right now actually on their phone and walking, they're just lucky that, there's not a manhole cover missing and there's not a car coming, and, they're safe, or so they think. Same goes for, the elderly or 65 and older. Whatever multitasking means to you, less is more. Get your attention back onto the single thing that you're doing, and don't focus on everything else, so that you can safely get from A to Z in what it is that you're actually doing, whether that's moving from one location to the next, preparing a meal, whatever it is. One thing at a time, I think, lends the focus to keeping yourself safe.
I love that. And it helps us enjoy our life more. Be in the moment. There's a billion things to worry about, both in the future and the past, but that worry doesn't serve us any really good purpose for the most part. So being able to enjoy our lives in the moment and be present doing the things that we're doing, that's such a great thing to just benefit our lives overall. So I love that you brought that back up, April.
Kristi and April, those are amazing examples and very pertinent. Being in the moment is so very important. Just like we don't text when we drive, at least we're not supposed to. We shouldn't text when we walk. So very important examples. So I really appreciate you calling those out. I also want to call out just how important it is to plan ahead, with some of the examples that were shared with regard to changing different things in the home and that sort of thing. But April, I would love for you to talk a little bit more about how can we plan ahead, and how can older adults plan ahead for themselves, or their families help them plan ahead with regard to environment or other things.
Yes. This is a great topic, and one I think that many shy away from, but we should, get rid of that taboo. Everyone is not getting out of this life alive. There is an end. And if we're lucky, we get to see it at a great number, right? And we know statistically that function does decline over time. And older adults can be the last one standing. So the awareness of that, and the awareness that the mind and body can change over time, or a friend or another loved one's change, and you can see that, just brings to light the importance of having real, honest conversations with the people in your life that are in your circle, that are there for you. Whether it's medication management, transportation to and from doctors, maybe they help you with bill maintenance, and keeping you well and safe in your own home. So whoever that circle is, it's important to have conversations early on about your wishes, your desires, what you see for yourself as you age in place, hopefully. And if you do know that that's your goal, is what do you and your unit, your circle, need to do, or what changes need to happen over time to see that goal through? So that could be home modifications, ramp installments, stair chair installments. That could be somebody moving in with somebody else, maybe, if that's an option. And of course, this involves the primary care provider, whether that's an NP, physician, making those same wishes known, including them in the circle so that there are no surprises and that your loved ones and whoever is with you can make the best choices for you as you age and age successfully at that. The other topic that comes up frequently is long-term care planning. So that's not just limited to home environment. That's, advanced to the end of life, like, assisted living, SNF housing. Really, it covers the gamut of what's available to you. You just need to have those dialogues and make your wishes known.
Great. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. I know that we do so much at Stony Brook and have so many programs. Can you just highlight a few of the things that we do to help when it comes to fall prevention?
Sure. So here at Stony Brook, the CIN is working on universal fall screening and assessment. We do this for all of our patients that we are supporting post-inpatient discharge or emergency room discharge. We also, with the help of Kristi and her team, are leading the efforts for an enterprise-wide approach in falls risk screening, assessment, intervention, and management, which includes community linkages. It includes referrals to PT programs. It includes referrals to home health for in-home PT assessment and an environmental scan that is so valuable that I, as a clinician over here, cannot see into someone's home. And it includes other programs, other community-based programs that Kristi's already leading. So Kristi, I don't know if you want to go now in depth to your offerings and all the services that you're working on and continue to work on for the future.
We are really excited to talk about this, and I'm going to pass it over to Brittany in just a moment to really talk about the four main types of programs that we offer. But we are lucky at Stony Brook Medicine. We have a federal grant from the Administration for Community Living that helps us deliver and increase the reach of evidence-based programs. So all of these things that we talked about of how to prevent a fall, we actually have packaged programming, nationally, internationally developed, that are proven to reduce our risk of fallings and enjoy our lives. Some of them are exercise-based, some of them are discussion-based, some of them are a mix of both. So there's lots of options to choose from, and we highly, highly encourage everyone to get involved with them and find one that's right for you. And I'm going to pass it over. And these programs are traditionally offered free in the community, whether it's in person or now on Zoom. We love being able to do that now. It's one of the positives that came out of the pandemic, and we were socially isolating for all of that time. We can still connect just like we are today through Zoom and other types of platforms where you can just, wake up, have your coffee, and join in one of our evidence-based program courses from the comfort of your own home. So I'm going to bounce it over to Brittany to talk about the four different programs that at Stony Brook we're able to offer with this grant funding.
Thank you, Kristi. So yes, as Kristi said, we're very excited about the grant we received to help spread these programs. So there is a website through Stony Brook that you can look at the schedule, sign up. If there's not a program readily available, you can sign up for a wait list and we'll reach out to you when we do have a program. And there's a little bit of a description, but just to give everybody a brief overview of the four programs, we have Tai Chi for arthritis and falls prevention, which is focused on more of the balance and slow movements. We have a class called A Matter of Balance, which is a group class that focuses on discussion about the fear of falling. There's a small exercise component of that one, but it really is focused on that fear of falling that we talked about before, trying to stop limiting ourselves and let us enjoy what we love in life without that fear limiting us. We have a class called Stepping On, which is a great class. It has a bunch of different guest health experts, so PT, OT, pharmacist, come in and talk about relevant topics to the risk factors. So some of the risk factors that April and Kristi talked about before, those modifiable risk factors, those are all discussed in the Stepping On class. That's, again, a group discussion-based class. And then our last program is Otago exercise program, which is newer for us in implementing, but we've had really great success. So that is an exercise-based class. There's 17 strength and balance exercises that you progress through over the course of 8 weeks. And that one right now, we are slowly opening it in group sessions, but there are physical therapy locations that are using that in their PT plan of care. So if that was also of interest, we can help anybody get connected with some of the sites that we do have physical therapists offering that for.
That's great. Thank you so much. We do so many wonderful things for our patients and for our community. And before we go to the final question and kind of wrap things up, I also want to make sure we call out the fact that at Stony Brook Medicine, we are academic. We are a research organization as well as a caregiving organization. And one of the things that we're also very fortunate to have is a significant endowment that was given to the School of Medicine with regard to the Center for Healthy Aging. And so we've been working on standing up a center that will do research for the future. And some initial grants have been provided to different investigators to really think through some of these cognitive issues and other issues, and how the science of aging works so that we can help others in their scientific discovery so that in the future we'll have more aids, more solution sets, if you will. So we're really excited about that. But let's go ahead and kind of wrap things up. We want to share with everyone, this has been recorded, so it will be available afterwards. So if you didn't get a chance to take notes, or if you heard something you want to make sure you listen to again and get more information on, by all means, feel free to look at the links in YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, etc. So we'll be out there, and this will be recorded for your future benefit. And before we say goodbye, I thought we could just have each individual on the call just share a little bit with the audience. What one key message is most important from your perspective that everyone take away from the dialogue today? Let's go ahead, April. Let's go with you first.
I would say, do a self-assessment today. Assess your risk today and be honest. It's okay.
Right. Great. Thank you so much. Brittany, what is your thought?
Yeah, I think my biggest thing is that by making changes and acknowledging your falls risk, it will actually help you keep your independence. It won't take it away from you. I know that's a big thing people are scared of. So just making those changes to help yourself.
Great. And Kristi, what is your thought?
Talk about it. So talk about it with your healthcare provider, talk about it with your friends and family. There's so much going on that we can do, and you'll be surprised how much you can relate to your friends and family on shared concerns, or really, like Brittany was mentioning, that some of the programs like Stepping On and A Matter of Balance that we offer, a lot of that group discussion is peers sharing what they've already done to make their life safer and more enjoyable and maintain their independence. Every workshop that we do, we learn something new from the participants. It's just a wonderful opportunity to say, you know what, I used to enjoy doing this. I don't feel like I can do it safely anymore. And having those discussions where somebody's going to say, hey, I felt the same way, and this is something that I do so that I can safely enjoy it, or something different. Whether it's, again, adaptive equipment, making home modifications, changing our behavior, increasing our strength and balance, all of these things, talk about it. And if you want to talk about it with us, give us a call or send us an email. We love talking about this topic.
Kristi, thanks so much. And thank you to all three of you. You've been a lovely panel, a lot of great information. I greatly appreciate your expertise and sharing that with the viewers. And thank you to the viewers for tuning in. We appreciate your time and attention, and your ability and desire to want to learn about this very important topic. So thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Liz.